I thought it was just another ruin in the woods, until the church breathed. Now I'm wearing robes I don't remember putting on, and something inside me is preaching. Stay till the end, because once the church inhales, it never lets go. Part 1. The coordinates weren't on any map. Evelyn. I've always chased the strange. Folklore, myths, half-buried stories that slip through the cracks of history like mold in a forgotten basement. But I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't prepared for something that breathed back. My name is Evelyn Blackwood. I used to be a theology student. I studied texts older than the paper they were printed on, prayers etched into the bones of saints. But that life didn't last. Too many questions, too few answers. Now I run a blog, Nighttime. I write about forgotten churches, relics that cry blood, and backwards rituals whispered about but never filmed. It pays in pennies and nightmares. And last week, it paid me. In coordinates. The email had no subject line, just a single sentence. It still breathes. No sender name, no context. Just a pin dropped on a dead corner of a digital map, somewhere in the Drearfield woods. I looked. Nothing on Google Earth. No satellite images. No path. No buildings. Just trees. I asked in forums. No replies. I posted the coordinates. Someone replied simply, "Don't." So I did what any horror-chasing idiot would do. I packed my camera, a voice recorder, 2 protein bars, and a knife, just in case the woods had something with teeth. And I drove. The trail was barely real. A break in the trees marked only by a rotted wooden sign, blank from years of moss and weather. I hiked for 2 hours, and then I saw it. It wasn't on a hill. It wasn't hidden. It was waiting. A church, or what used to be one. Crumbling stone, ivy-strangled walls, a steeple leaning like it was nodding off. But it was the air that stopped me, thick, not humid, heavy, like breathing inside a body instead of a building. I put my hand on the outer wall. It was warm, pulsing, like flesh. I took pictures, recorded audio. Nothing showed up on playback. No images, no sound. I stepped through the arched doorway. The doors were gone, rotted into the dirt. Inside, the air was even heavier. Dust floated like ash. The floor creaked under my boots, but not like wood. It was softer. The pews had collapsed into themselves. The altar was still there. Cracked, marble stained with something brownish black that had seeped deep into the grain. It looked like blood. Old, dried, and ancient. And then I heard it. A breath. Not mine, not wind. The walls. They were moving. So slowly, you wouldn't notice unless you stared. Like lungs. I backed toward the exit. Light spilled in through the broken stained glass. But when I turned to leave, the doorway looked smaller. The sunlight outside was dimming. Fast. Faster than it should. I looked at my watch. 4:46 p.m. Sunset shouldn't have come yet. But in that moment, as the last sliver of daylight touched the threshold, the church inhaled. Dust, leaves, even the hanging moss outside were sucked inside. The candles I hadn't noticed before flickered to life. One by one, without flame, without touch. The stone groaned, and behind me, the sound of doors slamming shut. There were no doors when I walked in. Now, there were, massive, oak, iron-hinged, closed. I ran to them, pushed. Nothing. Then I looked up. Above the altar, in the domed ceiling, was a hole, a circular wound in the roof where light should have poured through, but no light came, just darkness. And sound. A sound like a massive heart, slow, heavy, and breathing. I don't know what I walked into. I don't know if this is still Earth, or if the coordinates led me somewhere else. But I do know this. This church doesn't just exist. It hungers. And I think I think it's been waiting for me. Part 2. The pulpit has veins. There's something wrong with how time moves in here. No ticking clocks, no changing shadows. Just the slow, steady sound of breath that isn't mine. After the doors slammed shut, I stopped trying to leave, because whatever this place is, it doesn't follow our rules. So I did what I came to do. I started exploring. The flashlight beam cuts through the dust like it's underwater. Every breath I take feels filtered, like something else is sharing. The air. The altar stands ahead, cracked marble, streaked with that same brown-black stain I saw earlier. I reached out. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. A need to know if it was just stone. My fingertips brushed the surface. It was warm, not like sun-warmed stone. Body warm, and it bled. A single dark drop bubbled up where I touched it, rolled down the side and vanished into a groove I hadn't noticed before. The groove ran down the altar's front, like a vein. That's when I saw them. The pews. All of them. They weren't empty. Lined row after row, like mourners frozen mid-service, were figures, tall, stiff, unmoving, mannequins, each one dressed in old moth-eaten funeral clothes, suits from another century, veils of black lace, pale gloves stretched over hands that ended in plastic joints. Their heads were tilted down, all of them, as if listening, as if praying. To what, I didn't know. But they were all turned toward the pulpit, and behind the pulpit, a spiral staircase leading up into the steeple. I climbed. The higher I went, the less it felt like a steeple. The air thickened. The walls changed. Stone gave way to something else, something soft, mottled, fleshy. My flashlight flickered, but I saw enough. The steeple wasn't hollow like it should be. It was alive, lined with something like membrane, veined, damp, pulsing faintly. I reached out. It shuddered beneath my hand, stumbled back down. I needed air, real air. I needed something that wasn't made of lung tissue and whispers. Back on the main floor, I noticed something new. A small table by the altar. One I swear wasn't there before, and on it, a leather-bound book. Old, dry. The cover brittle with time. Inside, yellowed pages, handwritten in ink that had bled into the paper like wounds. The journal of someone named Pastor Colgrave. The first entries were ordinary, sermons, observations, prayers. But by the 7th page, the words changed. They don't listen. The congregation breathes, but does not think. I feel my sermons echo back at me, not in silence, but in hunger. Later, the pulpit grows roots. I saw them writhe beneath the boards. I don't know if I'm preaching to God or into God. Then, there's something behind the altar. I've named it, the throat of God. When I speak, it responds. And the final legible page, the church is alive. But I don't think we built it. I think it built us. The rest was scratched out, violently. Deep gouges in the paper, like the author was trying to carve through it. I flipped back to the inside cover. There, scribbled hastily, "Do not speak when it breathes." And it was breathing again, slower this time, like it was asleep, or pretending to be. I grabbed my recorder. If I die here, I thought, someone should hear what I heard. I pressed record. I stood still, silent. Let the mic capture the rhythm of the church's lungs. 30 seconds. One full inhale. One long exhale. I stopped the recording, rewound, pressed play, and what came out wasn't breathing. Evelyn Blackwood. Evelyn. It said my name, my full name, but that wasn't the worst part. It said one more word. Soft, loving, commanding. Kneel. I dropped the recorder. It clattered on the stone. The mannequins didn't move. The walls didn't pulse. But I could feel it. The church had spoken. To me. It knew me. And in that silence, with the altar still bleeding and the steeple groaning above me, I realized something. I wasn't a visitor here. I was the next chapter. Part 3. The choir with no mouths. It started with the hum. Low, almost beautiful, but wrong. It wasn't there when I fell asleep, or maybe I never really did. The light in the church doesn't change, not like outside. The candles burn forever. The dust hangs still. Even time breathes funny in here, but I remember the sound. That slow, droning hum that started just beneath the floorboards. And the mannequins. They were humming. Their heads, stiff, plastic, had shifted, tilted, their hollow faces all turned toward me. Not dramatically, not all at once, just enough to know they weren't facing the pulpit anymore. They were watching me. I stood. I didn't blink, didn't speak. I just backed away, keeping the flashlight steady. Their hum grew louder, vibrated through the air like a chant with no words. Then I saw one move. Its hand, a twitch, a curl of its plastic fingers over the pew rail. I ran, back behind the altar, past the throat, past the bleeding marble. I had to find somewhere they hadn't touched, somewhere not breathing. And that's when I found the hatch, half rotted, embedded. In the stone floor behind the pulpit, I hadn't noticed it before, but the journal had mentioned a lower hall, a place for choirs. I pulled it open. The hinges screamed. What greeted me wasn't a basement. It was silence and wet stone. A spiral staircase led down, carved from the same pulsing material that lined the steeple above. I descended. One step, then two. Every step, the humming returned. But lower now, like I was descending into the lungs of something ancient. The air grew colder, thicker, sweet with rot. At the bottom, my flashlight flickered, but I saw them. Figures, a ring of them, kneeling, not mannequins. People, preserved. Skin pale and tight, like wax stretched over bone. Their bodies weren't breathing, but their heads moved. Slowly, in rhythm, each was blindfolded. Their mouths were sewn shut, and yet they were humming. No lips, no lungs, just this sound, a sound that shouldn't have been. They formed a perfect circle, a choir pit. In the center, a stone lectern stood, melted from years of heat that never should have been here. Symbols were etched into the floor, symbols that pulsed red under my feet. I whispered, "Who are you?" And one of them twitched. Their head turned slightly, as if hearing my voice from underwater. Then another moved, and another, still humming, a harmony of the damned. I stepped closer. One of the blindfolds shifted. The eyes beneath it were open. They saw nothing, glazed over, red-rimmed, eternal. But they looked toward me. They looked through me. Then one of them fell forward, hands outstretched, knees scraping the stone. Their skin cracked like paper. I swear to God, they were reaching for me. I turned to run, but behind me, something had changed. The tunnel out had disappeared. There was only a blank wall, breathing slightly with each of my panicked breaths. So I did the only thing I could. I closed my eyes, and I listened. The hum was now behind my eyes, inside my ears, like memory, like a lullaby. And then I understood. These weren't choir members. They were sermons, each of them, a soul once fed to this place, held in stillness. Their worship harvested, their forms preserved to keep the church alive. The church didn't represent a god, it was one, a living, breathing God of forgotten worship, grown from decades of sermons and sacrifice. Every echo, every prayer, every kneeling body fed its body, and it had room left. One pew, one voice missing from its choir. Mine. The humming swelled. It filled my body, rang through my ribs like someone was tuning me from the inside. And then, darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the main hall, lying on the stone. The pews were still, the mannequins unmoved. The journal rested open beside me, turned to a page I hadn't read before, written in a rushed, ink-blotted hand. I saw myself in the pit. I hummed with them. I knew the song. We all do, eventually. I brought my hand to my face. My mouth was whole, but when I touched my teeth, one was missing. No blood, no pain, just gone. And I don't remember when it left. But I do remember the dream. I was kneeling, blindfolded, and I was humming, louder than the rest. And somewhere in the distance, I heard my voice speaking. Not humming, speaking, preaching, delivering a sermon. I'd never written, but always known. And when I looked up in that dream, the pews were full, and they were all mannequins, and they were clapping, in rhythm, to me. Part 4. The Organ Room. I didn't sleep after the dream. I'm not even sure I blinked. My hands shook for hours. Every sound in the church seemed louder now. The creaking wood, the hush of breath that wasn't mine. And worst of all, the hum. The quiet, constant hum under everything. Like the church had a voice, it was humming to itself. I thought I had seen the worst it could offer. I hadn't. That morning, if it even was morning, I went back to the pulpit. The mannequins hadn't moved again, but I didn't trust them. I could feel them watching with eyes they didn't have. Behind the pulpit, beneath a shroud of rotting velvet and crumbling stone, I found the sealed door. It was part of the wall, or at least it looked that way. Stone the same color, cracked the same, but there was a seam, just wide enough to slide a fingernail in. I pulled. Something on the other side pulled back, but it didn't resist for long. The door groaned, not like hinges, but like something stretching, like a jaw unhinging after years of stillness. Inside was the organ room. The air was thicker, hotter, moist, like the inside of a throat. The room pulsed, and in its center was it, an organ, not made of wood and metal, but of muscle, pipe, and bone. A towering, twisting mass of coiled flesh. Its pipes were veins. Its pedals were stitched skin. Its keys. I didn't want to touch them, but I did, because I had to know. Pressed one. It didn't play music. It groaned. The whole church groaned with it. Walls trembled. Pews shifted. I heard something fall from the rafters. The floor beneath my feet pulsed, shifted, like the entire building had just inhaled differently. And when I looked down at the key I had pressed, there was something stitched into it, a single phrase, in thread that pulsed red. Reverence is fleshy didn't understand it then, but I was starting to. I pressed another key. The lights flickered. I pressed a third. The candles extinguished themselves. Each sound wasn't sound. It was command. Each note reshaped part of the church, as if the organ was its nervous system, and I had just put my fingers on its spine. I stepped away. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else. Excitement. The thought disgusted me, and that's when I heard my own voice, not in my head, from the air, from above, playing back the recording I'd made earlier, the one with the whisper. Only this time, it didn't say just my name. It said more, over and over. Evelyn Blackwood. Kneel. Sing. Serve. Be hollow. Be filled. And as I listened, I realized my voice was joining it, not from my mouth, from somewhere else. It echoed behind me, with me, matching pitch, matching rhythm, like my voice had split into two, and the other half had chosen a side. Turned to leave, and something heavy thudded in my bag. The journal. I didn't put it there. I hadn't even touched it since the choir pit. I opened it. It had turned itself to a new page, one that hadn't been written before. The ink was still wet. She was chosen. No signature, no date, just that. I closed the book, backed out of the organ room, and as I turned, I caught sight of myself in one of the tall, stained glass windows, shattered and darkened by years of dust and decay. My reflection didn't match me. It stood as I moved, but faster, a fraction ahead. It was smiling. I wasn't. And then, blood. It leaked from the mouth of the reflection, not from my mouth. The reflection bled and smiled wider. Then it tilted its head, as if to say, "Now you understand." And I think I do. The church doesn't need worshippers. It needs instruments. And it's been tuning me, one breath at a time. Part 5, Where the Floorboards Breathe. I don't know how long I've been here. Time folds strangely inside these walls. The candles never burn down. The air never cools. There's no dawn, no dusk, only breath. Mine and the church's. The floorboards breathe now. I hear them inhale when I walk, feel them exhale when I stop. They creak in rhythm, not with my steps, but with my lungs. And lately, I can't tell whose breath I'm taking. I tried to leave. Again, I thought maybe the doors would open if I didn't look desperate, if I didn't run. They did open, just not to the world I left. The first time, I stepped into a chapel drowned in murky water. Stained glass floated in shards across the surface like dead butterflies. The mannequins inside were half submerged, still seated, still staring. One turned its head as I passed. I shut the door behind me, opened another. The next room was scorched black. Ash coated the pews. The pulpit had melted, but something still pulsed where the altar had been. People knelt in rows. Not mannequins, real people, or what was left of them. Their skin was crisped, their faces charred, mouths sewn shut, still praying. I opened another door, and another. Each one showed the same chapel, but twisted, flooded, burned, inverted, covered in vines, buried in bone, an endless loop of rot and worship. I ran from door to door, screaming. Nothing led out, just more churches, all breathing, all watching. The journal didn't help this time. It had gone blank. So I returned to the main hall, back to the organ, back to the pulpit, back to the place that knows me better than I do. And that's when I saw the mural. It stretched across the back wall, covered in dust until now, almost hidden behind layers of peeling paint and rot. I wiped it clean, and I saw myself, not an interpretation, not symbolic. Me, kneeling before the altar. My head bowed, and growing from the organ behind me were dozens of long blood-red veins. They stretched from the pipes, snaking across the wall, and wove into the mural's version of me, like a crown of veins. It wasn't art, it was prophecy. Below the mural, words had been carved, not written, scratched into the stone with something jagged. The body is the hymn, the blood is the key. I touched the stone. It was warm, and then I felt it, inside my chest. A second rhythm, not my heartbeat, not mine alone. The church. It was breathing through me now. I could feel its air moving in my lungs, its rhythm replacing mine. And then it spoke, not aloud, inside me, a whisper not made of sound, but of intention. One breath left. Give it to me. I staggered back. I tried to breathe faster, but couldn't. The church controlled it now. Each inhale, a gift. Each exhale, a toll. And then I saw it, tucked in the corner of the chapel, Behind the pulpit, almost forgotten, the baptismal font, but it wasn't filled with holy water. It was full of black liquid, still, thick, viscous. I stepped toward. It compelled. And when I looked in, my reflection stared back. But it wasn't me anymore. She wore robes the color of dried blood. Her mouth was sewn shut. Her eyes were missing, hollow sockets staring through nothing. And despite that, she smiled. Her stitches pulled wide, like she knew something I didn't. Like she'd already said yes. I stepped back, but the reflection didn't move with me. She stayed, floating on the surface of that black water, watching, waiting, and somewhere inside my chest, the church inhaled again, and I felt myself starting to answer. Part 6. Let this be her sermon. I woke up in the pew. The light was different, softer but wrong. The kind of glow you see behind your eyelids before a nightmare starts. My arms were heavy, sticky. I looked down. The sleeves of my shirt were gone, replaced by long ceremonial robes the color of dried rust, woven through with faint, writhing black thread. My wrists, both were slit. Shallow, neat, not enough to kill, just enough to bleed. The blood had dried into the cloth, the same way you'd soak parchment before you write something sacred. I stood, and the mannequins moved, only when I turned away, only when I blinked. A shift of the head, a tilt of a torso, the soft scrape of plastic feet against old stone. They watched, not because they cared, because they were waiting. The altar hummed, the organ flexed. I wasn't Evelyn anymore, not entirely, and I wasn't alone. She stepped out from the side aisle, a woman wrapped in black, face pale as candle wax, eyes rimmed with veins and memory. Delora, I whispered. She nodded. A name from the journal, the last entry that made sense, the last survivor of the original congregation. Her voice was a whisper woven with 1,000 sermons. You were never meant to leave, Evelyn. I didn't come here to join. No, she said, you came to listen, but the church only listens to those it's ready to speak through. She stepped closer. Behind her, the pews began to fill, not with mannequins, not with echoes, but with bodies. Some I recognized. The blindfolded choir from beneath the floor, the burned worshippers from the scorched chapel, the drowned ones from the flooded pews, all of them seated, all of them still, but watching. She touched my arm. You've already been chosen. That breath you hold, it isn't yours. The host of breath must carry the hymn, or the church will starve. What happens if I refuse? She didn't smile. She just looked up toward the stained glass dome above the altar, now whole, glowing from within. If you refuse, the walls collapse, the bodies rot, the breath escapes. It will find another vessel, but it prefers you. Why me? She finally smiled. Because you listened. The organ behind me stirred. Veins pulsed. Pipes inhaled. My hands moved without my mind. They reached toward the keys. Delora stepped back. You have one final choice. Speak the sermon, or break the heart. My eyes turned to the organ, its core thrumming like a beast dreaming beneath a thin sheet of skin. I could destroy it. I could use the blade at my side, the one I hadn't noticed until now. Its handle pulsed with breath, but as I raised it, something held me. Not Delora, not the mannequins, something inside. And then, the whisper returned. Not from the walls, from me, a chorus in my voice, but older, louder. Let this be her sermon. And I understood. The blood in my arms wasn't mine. The robes on my body were sewn from prayers. The breath in my lungs didn't belong to Evelyn Blackwood. It belonged to the church. I lowered the blade. and I spoke. A dirt trail winds through the woods outside Drearfield. A family of 4, parents and 2 young children, hikes quietly. The father glances at his GPS. "This place isn't on the map," he says. They step into a clearing. At the center, the church, perfectly preserved. No moss, no ruin, stone bright and still. The doors are open from within. A voice, a woman's, clear, calm, commanding, delivering a sermon, not in Latin, not in English, but something older. The family hesitates, listens, and steps inside. The doors swing closed behind them. The church inhales. The church is still breathing. And now, I'm its voice. If you heard the sermon, it's already inside you too. If this story haunted you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Haunted Echoes for more horrors whispered from places you should never find.